Week 1 is on chapters 1, 2, and 7, just as a quick reminder. Hopefully everyone was able to get in touch with career services. That process went smoothly. Does anybody have any questions on that from yesterday? All right. So, like we stated, you will be working with career services on reviewing your resume if you currently have one, helping you to write one if you don't have one. Every career services department works differently. Please be mindful that you all work at different campuses, and even at those campuses, at the larger campuses, there's different people. So please defer to your respective career services departments on how they want to work. But for the most part, what we're concerned about mostly here in this class is you turning in the date and time that you've scheduled with career services. And then next Thursday, you will be turning in that resume that was reviewed by career services. Even if it's as simple as they gave you a good to go and they sign off on it, you'll be uploading that resume. What we're going to focus on here is how the academic components of drafting a resume. Now, I say academic components because, again, you guys are all in different industries. Some industries, your career services person may say, hey, put your skills at the top. Some may say, really highlight this or highlight that. And you want to defer to them because, for all intensive purposes, they're the subject matter expert in terms of that industry. So, what the VA industry may want highlighted may be something totally different. In career services, they are working with employers every day, so they know what they want to see, right? So we're just going to talk about resume writing in its general form. We know that a resume is a written document of one's qualifications, right? We know that it outlines your work experience, your education, right? It's something that allows an employer to compare apples to apples. Allegedly, that's what it's designed to do. They're comparing you against the next guy. And then also, what are they doing? They're comparing your qualifications against what their needs are. So we talked a little bit about hard skills and soft skills, and we said that those skills are important for you in doing your job, but it's also important for you in looking to find a job. So when you are looking at job advertisements, yes, we are looking at the company. Of course, we're looking at the pay, we're looking at the location, and we're looking at what they want us to do, but we need to dig even deeper and really pay attention to those technical and soft skills that they are highlighting. Why? Because when a company is looking at your resume, what do you think they're looking for? They're looking for those keywords that they put in that job description. And if you do not have, many of those keywords, it doesn't matter that you have experience or that you have the ability. Like, how are they going to know if it's not there? So in essence, it means that you are ensuring that your resume is written in such a way that they take notice. There's a lot of different ways 3 or 4 people could say the same thing. So it's not that you're wrong or you're pandering to the advertisement or that you're going to fib or lie in any way. No, you're just making sure that you're highlighting things that they want to see. Let's say, for example, me as an educator, I've taught in a lot of different modalities. I teach online, I teach in person, I've taught in business, I taught IT, I taught HR, I can go on and on and on, right? But when I applied to teach for this career services position, do you think that they were asking me about what I teach for IT? They didn't ask me, what I taught for the federal contractors. I train federal contractors. They want to know what kind of career services preparation experience do you have? So what did I have to do? I had to ensure that my resume talked about career services. If I went on and on and on about what I thought was important, because we can all agree that you can't put your entire career on two pieces of paper, which essentially is what most people want you to have with a resume. They want it to be succinct because they want it to be catered to the position that they're asking for. There's no way you can fit all that on, all of your experience on two pieces of paper. So you have to pick and choose what you write about with a job. On one job, I don't care if you were a cashier at Target. Maybe you were a cashier, but maybe you also did stocking, and maybe you also did reconciliation of the cash, machines at the end of the day. Maybe you also did inventory control. But if you're applying for, a job and is customer service driven, are you going to talk about inventory control that you did at Target? No. What are you going to focus on? You're going to focus on the customer service component of the job, right? So it's not that you are lying, it's that you're just omitting things that are not important for that particular job. Does that make sense? So what are you saying, Ms. Taylor? I may have to write my resume multiple times to cater to the job description. Yeah. And you have to keep it straight too. So imagine that. The number of resumes I have with extensions on it so I can keep it straight is astounding. You have to cater to that position. They don't want to know everything that you do at every job. They want to know the things that you do that they're asking for. So when you're looking at the job advertisements, you have to pull out those key phrases and make sure that if you've done it, it's in your job, it's in your resume. There's so many of us. How many of us have ever looked for a job and we've applied to many, many jobs and we're frustrated, like, man, what is up? How come they're not picking me? What is my problem? I know I'm qualified. I know I'm qualified. Yes, we all can attest to that, myself included. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of it has to do with how you write. I know this stuff. Let me go ahead and call myself out. I teach it. And I still don't do it because I get lazy. Sometimes I get lazy because who wants to write the resume over and over and over, right? And sometimes I would just put my resume out. Like me as a writer, I've done grant writing, technical writing, all contract writing, all kinds of stuff, right? And so I've even said, man, they can look at this resume and see I'm skilled, I'm qualified. And they're like, yeah, okay. And there's like, ma'am, you're too qualified. I don't have time to read all this. And I've had to go back and restructure my resume. And you know what? Yeah, I get better opportunities when I do that, because you can't just say, "Ooh, look at me. Look at all this stuff that I've done. I know I'm good." That may be true, but they may not be looking for all that stuff, right? They're looking for what they advertised for. So that you can shoot yourself in the foot. Anybody ever felt they were overqualified for a job? You're like, man, I'm going to send this because I'm overqualified. I know they're going to hire me. How could they say no? and a lot of times they say no. Why is that? It's not just because, they're intimidated by all of your overqualifications. They're like, I just need somebody to do what I'm seeking. Even me working in development, I worked in nonprofit for quite a number of years, and worked my way up to the top, chief development officer, executive vice president, done all of that stuff. But guess what? The technical side of what I do is finance and grant writing and auditing. And if I want to pare down and just apply for a grant writing job, if I talk about all that stuff I've done, what do you think they're going to say? They're like, ma'am, we don't need a president. We need you to grant write, right? So and I am guilty as charged. I'll be like, I ain't got time for all that. And a lot of times they'll be like, well, we don't have time for you either, right? So I get it. So I need to even, do what I'm preaching as well. So, but I'm telling you, it is the truth. So when you are looking at these job postings, you want to point out the things that they're putting there. Like, here's an example of a welding post. It says, they need blueprints and schematics, and they need you to be able to install torches, inspecting, welding, safety, guidelines, all that stuff, right? That is what they're saying. So if you have those skills, that is what you're going to put on your resume. And this is why I say defer to your career services because they're dealing with these employers. They're the subject matter experts for their specific region because career services personnel work in specific regions, and they get to know the employers and they know what they're looking for. Twice a year, we have what we call PAC meetings. Most technical schools do. And they invite in employers. And they're like, okay, what do you want to see from our graduates? And they'll tell us. And then that's how we create this class. That's how they create the technical assignments for you in your technical courses. That is why your career services will say, hey, tweak this in your resume, put that in your resume, right? It's coming directly from the employer's mouths. Even something as simple as make sure your people know how to send an email. For those of you that are even curious about that, like, why do we got to learn that? Because they complain about it. They say some of us are not even ready to write a memo. That's why we put it in our courses, right? So a lot of it comes directly from the horse's mouth. They want you guys to do that. So definitely you're going to ensure that you are utilizing these keywords, you're paying attention to it. Here's the other big thing. Many companies are using what we call automated tracking system software. And what does that do? They push your resume through this tracking system and it picks up on what you think. Those keywords. And so what do you think is going to happen when your resume doesn't, and they program it to say 50% keywords, 30% keywords, whatever. What do you think is going to happen if your resume doesn't have it? You're going to get that automatic letter saying that, oh, thank you so much. A human has never even seen your resume. Isn't that something? So some of us are getting, unfortunately, you're not going to move forward from a computer because we don't have the keywords in our resume. Does that make sense? Especially if there's companies, like the medical industry, if you're applying to a hospital, the bigger the company, the larger the chance they're using some type of ATS system. And even if not, if there's some company and, maybe they're a smaller company and this person that is doing the hiring, has 4 or 5 other hats, you know how long they typically look at a resume? Throughout my career, I've had to hire many, many people, and I spend less than 2 minutes looking at a resume. Less than 2 minutes. What do you think I'm looking for? Keywords. I know that, especially if I'm hiring directly for a position of mine, or if I've worked in HR and I'm looking for someone, I'm just looking for keywords, and I'm not spending more than 2 minutes looking at a resume. Probably less than that. And that is embarrassing to say, right? But it's true. It's true. And is it fair? Probably not. Probably not, because they probably had great candidates, but they didn't have it written properly, so they moved on to the next. Not good, right? So what goes on your resume? Well, obviously, these are the standard sections. Do they have to be there? Not necessarily. The main thing is the heading, your experience and education definitely needs to be there. Skills, again, it's industry specific. Do you want to include all your additional skills? Typically, it's in the technical industries that we do that. What about your summary? Now, some people call it a summary. Some people call it a profile. Some people call it qualifications. Most of it is just a quick little synopsis of your resume. Many times that same synopsis is used to create a cover letter, and we'll also talk about how you use it in what we call a sales pitch next week. And when you can use it on your online platforms. So that summary can be used in various ways. So I'm always going to encourage you to have some type of profile or summary at the top. People do tend to start with that summary because they're like, okay, before I even dig into this resume, let me see what this person is highlighting about themselves. And of course, what are they looking for? Those keywords. Make sense? Any questions on that? So what should your heading include? All of these things here, but let me do a caveat. Don't put your address on your resume. I feel like a parent saying this. You don't know those people. A lot of times now when you're using Indeed.com and these other job boards, not everybody is on the up and up. Unfortunately, there's all kinds of bad actors. Do not put your address on your resume. They don't need to know all that. When they hire you, they can get to know you. Okay? Don't do that. Some people even use like Google email, phone numbers. Phone number is okay, but I definitely would not put my address. So everything outside the address, you can put the geographic location. Some companies want to know, obviously, do you live in town, because they want to make sure that they're hiring someone locally. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with putting, Fort Myers or Tampa, but I'm not going to put my address. And sometimes I don't even, I may even put like the biggest metropolitan city, if I live in a smaller town, again, they don't even know all that, right? So everything outside of that, obviously you want to put. I do encourage you to put your social accounts, right? So if you have a LinkedIn, professional social accounts, then definitely put that, right? Because many people want to see that. It's interesting how it has become the norm. It's almost like people just expect you to have credit, right? We're a credit-based system here in America. So if you don't have credit, people think something's wrong with you. You can be like, no, I'm just really efficient with my finances. They're like, yeah, we don't trust you. You don't have credit. You're like, what? The same thing if you don't have a social platform. If they can't find you online, they're like, I don't know about this guy. What are you hiding? Isn't that ridiculous? But that is the norm, right? So in a business now, people expect you to at minimum have a LinkedIn account, right? Not social, but on a professional side. That is the expectation. Not saying that you have to, but that is what people tend to want to see. So should your summary include? Again, it's a quick glance on your qualifications. It describes, look at that, your strengths and skills, right? And like I said, it will be the catalyst for what we call your personal brand statement that we'll talk about. Essentially, that's something you put on LinkedIn, and it's also something you use to introduce yourself when you are out promoting yourself. Because like I said, you have to promote yourselves. No one's going to do it for you. You are not educating yourself and spending all this money just to get a job. You are doing it to build your career. And part of building your career is learning how to brand yourself. You're going to have to think through, and hopefully this career plan project will help you think through, what is my brand? Are you going to be a subject matter expert? Some people want to do that. Maybe you're in the VA program and you've decided, I really want to focus my career on, helping animals with terminal illness and you want to become a subject matter expert, maybe in cancer or tumors or something like that, right? Wasn't that a great field? And so you want to be one of the leading vet specialists that focus in on that. Or maybe you're in the welding and you really want to, focus your career on building, these long lasting, sustainable structures with, unique types of materials, because people are always experimenting with new materials, and and that is something that attracts you, and you want to be that, right? So what is your brand? What are you trying to do with your career? Are you trying to start your own low voltage, electrical, or maybe high voltage or whatever, and you want to be the number one family friendly, company in your area? Like, you want to be that guy. Y'all know how they do those slogans, almost like father and son or whatever else. And you want to create that brand. So whatever it is you're trying to do, you need to think through, what is my brand? And then you need to promote yourself in that sense, right? Again, skills, what is that? If you put it on your resume, focus on your hard and soft skills. Most times it's in a bulleted type list so people can scan it really, really quickly. You normally see it in 2 columns. If you do have it, you don't want to have a long list. It's not a food menu. You wants to be short. I don't suggest doing more than 4 bullet points on each column, but again, that there's no right or wrong to that. Education here, the book may say one thing, career services may say another. I may say something different, but what I typically see in my experience is if you are new in the industry, you typically put your career education at the top, right? Because that is the leading quality that you have. That is where most of your skills come from. Now, once you've been in the industry and you have a few years and you have some meat in your resume, then you can put your education at the bottom. Like somebody like me that has been doing a job for 20 something years, I'm not going to put my education at the top, right? I'm just going to throw it down there. They're going to assume, okay, you better have some type of education, right? But for those of us that are just starting out, you'll typically see education at the top. Doesn't matter, not really. It's just a matter of preference, really. But what should go in it? Obviously, most people want to see the name of your school. Make sure you put the city and state because not everybody knows Southern Technical College, for example, right? So make sure that you at least put the city and state. Most times they want to know what year you graduated, but if they're that interested, they'll ask. That's not a hard and fast put it, but most times they do want to see that. Now, experience is something where you're going to obviously spend the most of your time, right? Now, I use a system called a PAR system, where when I write my experience, I obviously include my position in the company and then the city and state and the dates I was there. But right after that, I normally write a really quick summary paragraph on what that job entailed. And then following that quick paragraph, no more than 4 sentences, I do at least 3 bullet points, and I use what's called a PAR system, which means it's a problem action results system. Now, I didn't put it in the screen because I want you guys to focus on what the book says, but I'm just telling you from my experience in writing. And you can Google it and look it up. What does that mean? Problem action results. But what you're basically saying is, and I'll give the example of this job. If I put career faculty member at STC, and I'll write up a brief blurb of what that is. But then my bullet points are going to talk about how well I've done the job, because remember, I'm trying to stand out. So I'm going to focus in on things that, a technical school would be most interested in. What is the student retention rate? What is the student success rate with my class? And what is the student satisfaction survey rate? You see? So those are the bullet points I'm going to put, because it's going to, set me apart from the next person who probably, maybe they don't know how to write a resume and they're just going to list, what they did. People don't just want to know what you did. They want to know how well you've done it. So for someone like me that has worked in finance, a big thing with financial resumes is we talk a lot about what? Profit. Either you're making money or you're saving money. And that's what people want to see. So if you're writing, a financially induced resume, then you're going to talk a lot about money. Does that make sense? So I want you to think through, okay, in my industry, obviously the keywords are one thing, but what is it people are going to want to say want to see, and then that will dictate what you say in your resume and make you, think through, okay, what have I done at this job? Because at most jobs, we do a lot of stuff, things that are not even on our job description. So you really have to think through what is going to make me attractive. And most times it has something to do with some type of result. So always think through, okay, what kind of result can I put on my resume in the experience section? Any questions on that? Make sense? Anyone ever written their own resume? Give me a quick, anybody written a resume? Okay, Eva, Erica, Timothy. Okay, good. So hopefully this is sounding familiar to you guys. Sounding familiar? Okay, good. Anybody else has any advice for the crowd? Oh, thanks, Erica. Got me a hand clap. All right. Anybody else has any advice that they want to share with writing resumes? To have it, some resume experts in the building? No? No? Okay. There's like, no, you're doing a good job. Keep going. Okay. All right. So there are different types of resumes. The most common one is what we call a timeline resume. Some people call it a chronological resume. And that just means you're starting with your most recent job all the way back. Typically, they don't want you to go back more than 10 years to your earliest job. Now, if you've only had one job for 10 years, that's even better. Sometimes, you can be a little bit more elaborative when you're actually, showcasing what you've done with that job. But normally it's back 10 years, unless you have experience, like say from me, if I'm someone with dual careers, right? Because I've been in nonprofit, I've been in finance, I've been in education. So if I want to talk about finance jobs, because I haven't done finance steadily, right? Then I will have to go back 10 years, because even more than 10 years, because I got to go all the way back to the military. Then when I got out of the military, worked very heavily in finance before I moved on. So I would, but luckily for me, there were some overlaps. So sometimes I can even omit work if it overlapped with my financial role. I don't have to put in, like teaching, for example, which overlaps all of my career. I've taught as an adjunct since 2007 while working, right? So I don't have to mention all the schools I worked for. I have a totally separate resume for just teaching, right? So timeline is chronological, typically back 10 years. Some people do a skills-based resume. A lot of times you'll see that on the tech side, where they'll list the skill set they have. So let's say if I have experience with HTML, creating websites. So I'll talk about my experience with HTML and creating websites and all the other software application you use for that. And then I'll list all the companies I've done that for, right? That's like skills based, right? You don't see that too often, but you do see it in certain industries. And then sometimes you can see like a combination where they'll have a brief little quick overview of the companies they work for, and then they'll list the skills after that, or they'll list the skills first, and then they'll just have this laundry list of companies they work for where they've done those skills. So again, it's industry specific. Sometimes a company will even tell you how to do it. I know like in the military, the government, if you go to apply for like a government job, a federal government job, they even have their own government styled resume that you have to create. Like I know a lot of companies made a lot of money just converting what we call civilian resumes into government resumes. Like that's a thing, right? So anyway, now most companies want you to send them your resume via PDF. Sometimes, they're using it to push through that system, and some systems want PDFs only, some systems want Word, but most times a company will ask for you to send them your resume PDF, and sometimes you want to do that anyway, because you don't want someone downloading your resume and then making a mistake. Sometimes they're going through the resume and they're looking for keywords, and then they can delete something by mistake, and a lot of companies don't want that mistake to happen, so they ask for PDFs. All right. Non-traditional resumes, this, web-based and virtual. I'm going to tell you, some people even consider LinkedIn, where if you go to LinkedIn and you'll find, because we will be doing LinkedIn here, you'll find their experience list, just like a big laundry list of all your experience. And that's another reason why most people want to see a LinkedIn account, because it's basically a virtual resume, in essence. All right. Clearly, you want, one of the reasons why we have you work with career services is because we want to make sure you've proofread your resume, spell check, all that kind of stuff. Make sure there's no redundancy. if you are rewriting resume over and over again and having to make certain adjustments for certain jobs, as you can imagine, it is to err is human. So people are going to make mistakes. Raise your hand. I'll go first. Me, where I've made mistakes. I've sent resumes to people with the wrong company on it. I've, copy and pasted something that I shouldn't have done it. And then I go back like, why hasn't that person called me? And then I go back to my application and see it's a hot mess. I'm like, well, that will explain it, right? So, and that's because I just, I was rushing. Erica, you want to say something? Or you're just raising your hand. Lastly, too, your references. Now, you two, I know, hey, like I said, I'll go first. Me. It's me, and I laugh it off because sometimes it was with jobs I really, really wanted, and I'm like, oh, forget that. She's a writer and she can't write. Um, your professional references, we always put references available upon request. I always keep a separate list of, references and update it, guys, because not only do you want to give your references a break, but sometimes too some of them may not become relevant anymore. Like I have references I use for education, I have references I use for finance or government, but and then if I have a really great working relationship with someone, I'll update my references. Make sure you ask your references what information that you is okay for you to share. Not everyone wants you giving out their phone number. They may say use my personal account, use my business email. So just make sure they know. And more importantly, make sure before you, if you're going to apply for a job and they're moving forward with calling your references, that you tell your references that they're going to get called. I typically send the job description to my reference so they'll know what I've applied for, and I'll send them a blurb like, hey, really focus on that project we did together if they ask about it, right? Like if you have good references and you have a good working relationship with people, you don't have to convince them to say great things about you. That's part of building up your reputation. I got references back 20 years, and I am used as a reference for people I've known for many, 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 many years. So, that speaks to the quality of who you are as a career person, right? All right. So that is it. Now, I know this may be hard for some of you experts that have already written your resume, so I apologize in advance. But here's what I want to know. I want to know list 3 unique things you have learned about resumes today. Hopefully you've learned something. If I didn't teach you anything, I apologize. Hopefully you can find it in your heart to find 3 things you've learned today. All right, 3 things you've learned about resumes today. Remember, you also have chapter 7, so feel free to look in your book. All right, my friends, let me remind you that we do not have class on tomorrow. So I will see you back here again on Monday. You do have until Sunday to turn all your work in. So please try to get that done as soon as possible, okay? All right, do we have any questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but it lets me. Okay, here we go. Any questions?